Welcome back to the Oddcast. I'm Alex.
And I'm Ricky.
And we're just two odd dudes who decided to start a podcast.
Yeah, today we're going to be talking about Alex.
Yeah,
we talked about me in episode 5, somewhat. We're going to talk about you and...
somewhat.
Yeah, somewhat. And your experience at Christian school, which we won't say, the name.
Yeah, but everybody knows.
Somebody knows.
Most of them know me.
Yeah. But those that don't, we're not going to say the name.
We're just, yeah.
But we're going to talk about your experience there.
Yeah. We're going to talk about kind of what your guys' response were. You know, some of you gave us responses about where you went to school, what your experience was. We'll talk a little bit about that too.
Yeah. Just kind of school, junior high and high school in general. Yeah. And part of this is relaying, I'm kind of asking, I'm kind of going to do somewhat of an interview style since you went as a student to a Christian school and now I'm working as a Bible teacher at a Christian school.
Right.
So
yeah.
I would love to get some insight from you of your experience and what that was like. And then see, maybe relate to some of the people and see our differences as, you went to a Christian school and I went to a public school.
Yeah.
Public school, so.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Let's get to the Oddcast. So let's get into this. I guess why don't we start with kind of some of the information because we did a poll of where
start with what everybody else said.
Yeah. And then we'll go into kind of what you said. So the first poll we put up, we just asked what type of school do people go to. Again, no right answer on this one. I know I had the little check mark on homeschool/online. It was just what it was.
Hey, Vody Bacham would be proud.
Yeah. So we had, let's see, I have to do quick math, 54 responses. Okay.
We had 54 responses?
54, which is great.
We're so popular.
We're popular, yeah. 34 of those were public school. Oh. So it's a great deal of public school.
But 20 of them weren't.
Yeah. 5 were private/charter. And some of this is an overlap.
Right.
11 went to a Christian school.
Okay.
Or religious school.
Right,
and then
right.
4 were homeschool/online.
Yeah, okay.
So that's kind of the demographic that we have that at least voted. And so we'll get more into, let's talk about your experience and then we'll get more into kind of other people's experience and we'll kind of bounce back and forth.
Yeah.
I just thought that was interesting information kind of going in of there's a lot of more public school.
Right.
And so I know personally, having gone to a public school, there's always that grass is greener on the other side kind of mentality. And growing up or becoming a Christian kind of in high school and
right.
experiencing that, it was kind of like, oh man, I always wish I went to a Christian school. But then knowing a bunch of kids from my church that went to a Christian school, it was like, they were like, it's just the same. You just have the same problem. So I guess kind of what was your overall, let's start with that. What was your overall experience, good, bad?
Yeah, totally.
With where you went.
I'd say overall, right? So I went to a Christian school from preschool to 12th grade. So I was there for 14 years of Christian schooling. Yeah, and overall,
the same one, right?
Same one. Yeah, it was a K through 12, but pre-K through 12 as well. But it was overall a good experience. Like I wouldn't change it going back. There are definitely some negatives for sure. Like there are things that, well, I mean, I guess we'll kind of get into that, but overall it was a good experience.
So there's some negatives, obviously some positives, like at every school. Do you think that you had the same experience that most people at the school you went to had?
No, yes and no. Because there's a lot of difference, right? Everybody thinks that like, if you don't go to a Christian school, that there's a lot of people at Christian school who are just like better kids. Like the kids at Christian school are just, maybe not just as bad, but pretty much just as bad as kids at public school. They just hide it more. Like they just have more of an ability to like, okay, we're not gonna talk to anybody else about this. We're just gonna do this in the dark. But people in public school just don't really care, as far as I understand. But I never went to public school, so
yeah, that's just your perception of the public school.
I've just heard stories about like public school prom and like people just like doing it in the middle of the dance circle,
Yeah.
And I'm pretty
there's
sure
always those stories that go around.
Yeah, that never happened at my school.
Yeah. Did you guys have dances?
We had dances. When I was in high school, we had dances 2 of the years. The first 2 years I was in high school, when I was a freshman and sophomore, they were banquets until my school deemed it okay to dance.
Oh,
yeah.
Right. Nice.
Yeah.
And then when you started dancing, was there actually dancing? Or was it like kind of like what Paul and I experienced
It was
in junior
just
high.
cha-cha slide over and over.
Yeah, Cupid shuffle. Yeah. Like, is it like junior high dance where like there's music playing and there's like 4 kids pretending to dance and the rest are just standing around the outside like staring at each other awkwardly?
We actually danced. We had some good prom dances. It was fun. It was a good time. Yeah. We also had like croquet on the side, and that was good stuff.
Yeah, that's way different then.
It is way different. Yeah.
Ours was like, it was pretty much a club.
Yeah, it was like people grinding up on each other.
Yeah. It was not a good experience.
We had a lot of chaperones who made sure you were not dancing inappropriately. I mean, there were still like the kids who were like, deep in the dance circle that were still doing it because that nobody could see them. But for the most part, it was pretty clean dancing because people were watching.
Yeah, our chaperones were like just standing on the outside, like acting like they didn't see anything. Yeah. So what were some of the positives you think you experienced because of the school that you went to? Like what if you had like 2 or 3 highlights that you think, hey, this is what I loved the most about where I went.
Right. So I think the biggest positive coming out of a Christian school for such a long time is the biblical background and the biblical knowledge that I have. It did not create in me this like biblical desire to follow Christ, but it did create. I have a lot of understanding of the story of the Bible, a lot of different characters of the Bible, and that sort of background is nice to have, right? Like that's not something that creates faith, but when you have faith, it's nice to be able to like, okay, yeah, I remember this story. I've heard all about this. Like this is familiar to me.
Yeah.
So that was a huge positive out of it for sure.
What, I guess then the flip side of that was like, what was the worst thing? Not like the worst experience, but the worst kind of quality or characteristic of not your school, but like the Christian school realm that you think you had to go through?
I think, and this is something that we kind of deal with when we were in youth ministry, is I think one of the biggest flaws when you're talking about like Christian school and when you're talking about that sort of education is parents think that, okay, I can send them to Christian school and they'll become Christians. That is not the case. That's not the case for youth group. That's not the case for school.
Right.
Like certainly there are cases in which a child really becomes a genuine Christian at school or church. Absolutely. But for the most part, the importance is going to be placed on that parent. It's going to be, okay, you have to do the work to like actually try and train up your child in the right way. You cannot just send them over to a school, even if the school is a great school. It's still up to the parents to be the one who is going to parent their child.
Right. It's a partnering together of parenting and leaders and teachers.
Yeah.
Because, even at a public school, the understanding of, my teachers were not just teachers to me, right? Like they were coaches, they're mentors, they're all these other things that are a part of the life of a child.
Right. They shape your life.
Yeah. And they're really important, but you still need the family backing.
Yeah.
Me playing basketball and having my dad as a coach and then transitioning to high school and having different coaches, I still need the backing of not my dad as a coach, but just my dad as my dad. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
So similar in the sense of, you having a Bible teacher that might know more about the Bible because they've studied it more than, parent is great, but the parent still has a huge influence in the foundation and those things. And then the encouraging of a student or a child.
Yeah. I mean, in any of it, that parent has to be able to, like anything that your child is learning, you're as a parent, you should be coming alongside them and helping them learn and make sure it's right. Because even in a Christian school, there are things that I would say that I learned that I don't think are biblical anymore. Parents should be coming alongside and being like, hey, what did you learn? Is that right? How can we dive deeper into this? And same goes for like youth ministry and whatnot too. Yeah.
And I think that, there's the Christian aspect of that, but then other sides of that of, we joke about, if you're in the Christian world and you go to a Protestant church, you've most likely have heard of the guy named Dave Ramsey.
Oh yeah.
And
we called him Dirty Dave in high school. Yeah, it was great.
The like Dave Ramsey thing is like, that is a completely different way in which to understand and do finances than the worldly way, right?
Yeah.
And so you might even just that in a family, like how do we handle our finances? What you're learning about school, and this is economics, and this is how we're handling. This is what you should save, and like that's going to be different than what a Christian family holds or what a different type of family holds, right? So the parenting is hugely important in that.
Yeah.
So here's another question for you. Was there a time in high school where you thought, man, I wish I didn't go here. I wish I went to a public school. Did you ever flirt with that idea?
Not me personally, because the reason I still liked the school I was at was because of the people, right? Like I've said before, I'm a very people-oriented person. So the fact that I was at a school with all the people that I already knew and all of my friends was fine for me. Like I wanted to be there. That was great, but there were tons of people who were there and didn't want to be there, but they were just there because their parents made them go there.
Right.
Right. And so it was just, luckily, like I was happy to be there, but there were a lot of people who weren't. There were a lot of people who just wanted to be at public school, or you wanted to be homeschooled, you know?
Yeah. I think one of the big things you said was Christian school kids are, I would say they're just as big as sinners.
Yeah.
Or messed up. They're just as broken.
They're all broken.
We're all broken.
Yeah.
And that's what the Bible is clear about. Right. Like we are all fallen short of the glory of God. And so the kind of misperception of, oh, they're better because they know Jesus, or they talk about Jesus and they're not going to sin as much. Like that's not the case, right? But I do think there's a big aspect of the pressure that comes from that type of environment.
Absolutely.
Where at like my high school, and Paul might attest to this, Paul's in the background, he might attest to this too, of it was like celebrated. That I think that's the major difference, right? So at one school, sin is looked at, and I don't know necessarily how your school handles it, but I would think the best way a Christian perspective is like we see the sin, we deal with it, we look at it, deal with it, and then we try and grow, right? And we try and actually deal with what's going on and the root and the heart of that. Yeah, that would be the
hope, yeah.
Right? And then, but like at our high school, like the debauchery of high school mentality was celebrated by the students and those around them, right? And it was like, this is not just like, oh, we all struggle, we all sin. This is to be celebrated, and it's fun, or it's funny, and it's acceptable.
Right.
Right. Paul, you're off screen. Would you agree? Yeah. Paul's nodding his head. Like that. It was.
It's like the difference between, like you have like the Pharisees, and then you have like the wicked people and like tax collectors. Like one group of people is like
the uppity righteous.
Yeah, there's self-righteous, and then there's we want to do the things that make us feel good, and both are bad.
Right. They both have their issues.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess So here's something. I'll ask you one more question, then we'll get into some of what the people said. So I'm a new Bible teacher.
Yeah.
For junior high. If you had one advice for me as a teacher, right, or an adult that's trying to help a junior high student understand the Bible, and then one piece of advice for the student that's at a Christian school, or even like the homeschool co-op Christian perspective. Now that you're an adult, you're a big boy.
Yeah.
With your own podcasts and stuff.
So adult.
What wisdom would you drop to those two different people?
I'll start with the kid. The first wisdom I would drop to a kid who's in private school or Christian school, or even a homeschool, or even in public school, who like goes to church or whatever, but like is just because you're learning a whole lot about it, just because you know a whole lot about Scripture, or just because like that's how you've grown up, does not mean you're a Christian. Like this is like kind of what I dealt with at a Christian school. This was one of the problems for me was I knew all this stuff. I had all this knowledge about Scripture, and I had a lot of like people who thought I was a really good Christian kid. And it made me think I was just a great Christian. And all the while I didn't actually really care to follow God. Like it wasn't until senior year that I was actually like, hey, I'm actually going to read my Bible like every day, or just try to do it as much as I can. Like I never really committed to it. It was just how I was raised. So any kid who's in that area, if all it is just I'm learning a whole lot about this and I know a lot about this and my family is Christian, dive deeper. Like that has to be, you have to actually want that for yourself and actually like commit to following God, not just knowing stuff.
Right. There's a faith aspect to that, not just
100%. Yeah.
Get what you're saying.
And that's one of the hard things is like, it is encouraged when you know so much about it, but you have to also, take the step of, like, I actually believe he's Lord. But then I guess for a teacher, I would give you, I guess the same advice, just reworded, is like, there are going to be kids who know everything about scripture, who know like maybe you're going to even have kids who know Greek and are like able to start reading in Greek, but just because their family has taught them these things doesn't mean they're necessarily following Christ.
Right.
They're still going to need to be challenged. They're still going to need to be convicted. They're still going to need to be like poured into in such a way that like you don't always expect that they're like a perfect Christian kid, you know?
Right. And I think that's huge of we, Christian or not, we're still broken.
Yeah.
And we need, you know, as a Christian, we believe we need the grace that overflows from Christ, right? And so we continue to show that, you know, we desire to move towards, you know, as a Christian, Christ likeness.
Right.
And we hope that we're displaying that to students or, you know, kids in a youth group, or you know, if you're a parent, your children. But that's a process. It's not a, you know, well, you go to a Christian school now, you're a good kid,
right?
Or you go to a public school and you're a bad kid. Like that's not the distinctive line,
right?
There's a lot more. Or you go to homeschool and you're just, you know, weird,
awkward.
You're a weird kid. Just kidding. We love our homeschool friends and their little bubbles. Sorry, Tony, as you're listening to this, I didn't mean it. All right. Is there anything else you want to say on that?
I want to homeschool my kids, so
yeah,
you guys are in probably the right spot. No, I mean, let's go into some of these answers.
Yeah. So we had asked kind of what people's experience was in junior high and high school, and I thought it was important to talk about these, mostly because. Sorry, I felt like I was going to yawn or sneeze there. I wasn't sure which one that was.
Or both.
Mostly because I thought us having such different upbringings in that regard. Like my family, your family's Christian in the sense of, you know, the typical going to Christian school.
Right,
parents upbringing is Christian, right? Mine was starting in the 6th, 7th grade. We started going to, you know, the church or whatever. But I went to public school and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So we have very different upbringings in ways in which we experience school, but I also think like I really liked high school. And I was actually talking with our buddy Andre this morning about that.
Yeah.
Why we liked high school and those type of things. But I thought it was interesting to read some of these. So I'm going to, you know, same thing, not have names or whatever, but first one.
Give them fake names.
Yeah. High school was hard. Alex, number 1.
What?
It just said high school is hard being a Christian in a public school, which I definitely experienced. You know, there was that aspect of you wanted that connection point with someone,
right.
But you didn't really know where to go with that because, you know, you could be made fun of or whatever it was.
Right.
Like, oh, the weirdo Christian kid, the goody good. And you're like, no, man, I'm messed up too. I'm actually trying to not be just okay with it.
Yeah.
Another one said that it sucked up to senior year. And there was a lot of those, which was really heartbreaking. As I was reading through this, someone said awkward. There was a couple that talked about being bullied, which I thought was, you know, that's the sad part. That there is a lot of that in school, and it's not just in public school, like as we've talked about.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You know, the public school, it's the bullying of like, oh, you goody good.
Right.
I'm sure it's something else at Christian school. Maybe it's the same thing. But.
I mean, there's both. I mean, you like even in Christian school, you have like the make fun of the weird kids or whatever it is. Sometimes the weird kids just have a little bit more of a place because there's just a little bit more weird kids at private schools.
Yeah.
Or at least ratio wise. You know?
Yeah.
But there's also like on the opposite hand, there's also like the shaming of people who are doing things that are sinful, of like they're just gonna make fun of them instead, which is like, okay, like you're still just gossiping about somebody. Yeah, they did something sinful, but you're still just gossiping and talking crap about them.
Yeah. I think that I learned a lot in high school, you know, about school, hopefully, but also just friends and learning how to grow and make friends and building relationships and those type of things. But one of the things that now I look back on, I kind of go, wow, how much did my words and my actions impact others? And I think that's something that we don't talk about with our kids enough. Is we do the whole like sticks and stones may break my bones kind of thing. It's like, but words will never hurt me. That's a load of garbage because words can hurt.
Sometimes more than a stick or a stone.
Right. Never been hit with a stick, I don't think.
You never what?
I don't think anyone's just picked up a stick and hit me before. Or
okay, but you've been like pushed on the ground in basketball, which is probably going to hurt more than just being like.
But that's not stick. I didn't play hockey.
Yeah.
Anyways, back to the point of
or baseball.
I did play baseball. I was awful at it. I did get hit with the ball, like a stone.
Yeah.
Just the aspect of how impactful words can be to someone else. Like now having the Christian perspective and seeing like James chapter 3 of the Bible, you know, if you're going to go to your Bible, James 3, talking about how powerful the tongue is, and it's so small, and it is so destructive, or it can build up.
Right.
And in seeing that in even just in a worldly setting outside of like being a Christian, that's still true. It doesn't matter if you're a Christian or not. That's the same truth, that your words can be so destructive or they can be so encouraging. And so I don't know. I don't know. I don't necessarily know where I'm going with that outside of, man, if we could teach kids that better,
right.
I think that there's still going to be bullying. I don't think we're going to get rid of that, right? There's still going to be, because kids are hurt, and a lot of times kids that are bullying are also hurting inside and those type of things. But if we can try and help people understand the impact of their words and their actions, that I think there would actually be better outcome of the growth in Christian schools, that it's not just be good, but it's actually be, Christ-like, and also public schools where it's not just, do whatever you want, but it's this understanding of your words and your actions have impacts on other people. And one of the things that's been big for me is there's such a push in the culture right now to talk about mental health, and everyone wants to talk about it, but very few seem to be doing anything about it. It's like, we need to talk about mental health. We need to talk about it. We need to talk about this stuff. And I agree, but what are we going to do to change that, right? Because if all we're going to do is say we need to talk about it and then we're going to feel better, like, that's just not true. Like, there's a lot of things we talk about, but like, Paul and I are sitting around talking about stuff, and then, you say something that, Spider-Man's the best superhero, and it just makes me angry because it's clearly not true, right? So like, just talking about something doesn't make you feel better.
But he could beat Batman easily.
No, not true.
No, he could.
Okay.
But
what I'm saying?
I agree with you.
So there has to be an aspect of action to the conversation, right? And so I think, we go, hey, your words are impactful. Your words can be hurtful. Now we as adults, leaders, teachers, coaches, parents, have to actually show that. Right. We need to encourage each other. We need to love each other with our words and our actions, and not just the people we like.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, like, again, I think it goes back to how is this kid being brought up as a child, like, because I think one of the biggest problems you have with like middle schoolers and high schoolers is they do not see the seriousness. They don't have the maturity there to understand that what they say and what they do in their life is important, right? Like, as Christians, we understand our life is immensely valuable because God has us here for a reason,
right?
And it is to preach the gospel and glorify Him, right? Like, we are His ambassadors here on earth as Christians, and that is an incredible purpose. But as a middle schooler or a high schooler who doesn't understand that, or doesn't know that, or doesn't even have like a semblance of an idea of, this life is not for nothing. It is, you're here for a reason. They don't think it's that big of a deal. They're just having a good time.
Yeah. Right? Well, and that's what I think is my point of, let's talk about it, but then let's show some action.
Yeah.
Let's care about each other in ways that are deeper than just like, how's your day? Right. So this goes back to when we were talking about making friends and we were talking about social media. It's the depth of conversation. Like, this culture is so lonely. The biggest complaint between 18 to 25-year-olds is loneliness and depression. And I think a lot of that stems from lack of communication, like actual deep intimacy with one another, but also, the things that we're, I know when I have a good life. I'm very blessed, have a great wife, great friends, awesome podcasts, right?
The best, some would say.
Yeah. But there's still nights where I sit at nighttime, my wife's asleep, and I'm like, I feel lonely. And the thoughts start to get in your head of, you're not worth this, or you're, whatever, like the insecurity starts to come out. And so how do we in action start to battle against those things? As a Christian, we go to Christ with those things, and we should hopefully start to show other people how that has impacted not just like our life, but is completely transformed us,
right?
As a whole, but also seeing the hope that is in that, moving forward. And public school, Christian school, homeschool, we all want to and will live for something. So that's a huge part of that. But the bullying aspect, I think, is coming back to, I don't really know what I'm living for, and I'm just not feeling great, so I'll put other people down. Right. So at least, even if I don't feel like I'm living for anything, at least I feel better than I did yesterday.
You feel like you have at least a little bit of a purpose, and that is either making people laugh or just feeling like you're better than somebody.
Yeah. And so, if you're
a bully, stop.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that. But if you're a student listening to this, like a student age, junior high, high school, college, even.
Yeah.
The impact that we have. And then as adults, like, man, the impact that an adult can have by saying sorry.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I made a mistake.
Yeah.
Right? Like, to my wife, when I get angry or upset or whatever it is, and the impact it has when I'm willing to, even publicly in front of friends, go, you're right, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I shouldn't have done that. That has impact far beyond just what it means to my wife.
Right,
like, it means a lot to my wife, and I should do that, but it has impact further than that, right?
Right.
How? Just the impact that the adults can make in demonstrating that. Let's not just talk about things. Let's demonstrate them with our actions.
Yeah, and again, I think it has to go back to that maturity, that seriousness of like, hey, like, what are you living for? Because there are plenty of people who go from middle school to high school to college to their day jobs and never have that maturity happen. They never leave that, okay, I'm just going to like make fun of people, or I'm just going to live the way I want to live because it's fun and it makes me happy, right? Like, if you don't have any reason to actually live, like if you don't have any objective truth to stand on, then of course, everything you do is futile.
Right.
Why would you not bully somebody? Why would you not like care about anything,
Yeah, I think one of the other things too, that just to put the damper on the sad party that we've had today.
Yeah.
Picking your friends wisely in high school. I don't care what school you go to. It's a little different if you're homeschooled. So
you don't really get to pick your brothers and sisters or your parents.
But even like if you're homeschooling, you do a co-op type thing, like choosing who you spend your time with means so much to where you're headed in the future. Right? Like, and how you're going to act and how you're going to treat people. And like through this list, I got bullied. Girls are mean. It was fun, but there was drama. I learned a lot. Didn't like a lot of people. Bored. Didn't have a lot of friends. Friends with the popular people. That messed me up. Didn't talk to a lot of people. Was bullied. It was awkward. I had a lot of friends. Like, so much of the one question we asked connected back to your friends.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people in your life, if you're still in high school, junior high, or if you're in college, that you can, if I'm saying this right now and you're like, yeah, I know who I shouldn't be hanging out with, cut that person out of your life. It's not a bad thing to be like, you know what? I can't do this anymore.
Right.
It's not that I don't care about you. It's not that I don't think you're, whatever about you.
Right.
I just know that there's a place I want to go and where I'm heading, especially if you're a Christian and that's pulling you out of that.
Right.
I would like you to be in my life to some regard or some degree or whatever, but if it's pulling me outside of what I'm trying to achieve or where I'm trying to head with my life or what I'm trying to do with the transformation of my heart, cut that person out.
Right.
And that's not mean. That's, taking care of the aspect of this is where I'm trying to go.
Right.
And too many people are going, oh, that's mean. No, that we have to do that for the protection of where we're going in our hearts. Right.
Right. Well, I mean, it's the same with like the whole, like, don't let your brother stumble kind of thing, right? Like, if you know that you're going to stumble doing something, you should cut it out. Like, if you are an alcoholic and you're like, well, I'm going to this party with a whole bunch of alcohol, but I'm just going to try not to drink alcohol.
Right.
Like, the likelihood is you're going to go to that party and drink alcohol.
Yeah.
And if you know that for a fact, the best thing you can do is cut it out, even if people are going to miss you at the party or people are going to be like, hey, why the heck weren't you there? You know, like you are trying to live a holy life. You're trying to glorify God.
Well, maybe they're not.
Maybe they're not. Yeah. But I mean, if your goal is to become an alcoholic, then go to the party.
Right. Like, but I think outside of even the Christian realm, it's not just that, right? Like we have that perspective, but outside of that, like if you're like, you know what? I've realized I've struggled with this and I don't want to do this anymore. Cut that person out.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing to cut that person out. It's not a mean thing. If there's something you're striving for, I would hope as a Christian, I hope that it's Christ. But even outside of that, if there's something you're striving for, cut that person out. Like my point is that's not a mean thing. And that's what the kind of culture is saying. Like, oh, that's so mean. That's like, no, it's not saying I'm better than you. It's not saying I'm greater than you or any of these other things. Or I think I'm so righteous and you're so not. It's just saying where I'm going, I can't, me and you aren't heading on the same direction. Right. Or like we as friends are heading on the same direction. So like this works. But all of a sudden,
just to be clear, that direction is to have the most successful podcast ever.
Yeah. But if all of a sudden you were like, we're going to be YouTube stars and I'm like, we're going to be podcast stars. I'm like, oh, two different directions.
Yeah. Then I would take Paul and him and I would do YouTube.
Yeah. All right. So we're back audio. That was weird. Sorry. Camera cut out, stuff happens. But anyways, we'll wrap this up. We talked about a lot today. I guess what I hope people get out of this is, as someone that went to public school and you that went to a Christian school, that doesn't mean anything. Right. I mean, they both have their pros. They both have their cons.
Right.
We're all broken. We're all struggling. We're all, as Christians that are doing this podcast, we're hoping that people are coming to know Christ and living for Christ and starting growing that. But the grass isn't greener on the other side. There's bullying at both schools. There's struggle with friends at both schools. There's drinking at both schools. There's partying at both schools. It's how are you going to move forward in those areas? Are you going to, if you don't want to do those things, are you going to keep hanging out with people that cause you to fall into those things? Right. Or are you going to do what is going to help further what you're trying to do?
Yeah. Are you going to be intentional about maturing in the right way?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's it. So you want to tell them our big announcement?
We have a big announcement. We're having a white elephant party tonight.
No, that's not our big announcement.
Oh, that was secret?
See, Alex doesn't read the group text. Paul knows what the big announcement is. The big announcement.
I know what the big announcement is.
Oh, you wanted to tell them though?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Big announcement for all you people listening. Guess what? Next week at this time, you'll be able to listen to a new podcast.
Yeah.
Because we're going to do it every week.
Yeah, we're moving to a weekly, every Monday we'll be releasing stuff.
And you know why? Because we just love you guys so much.
Yeah. And we've had a lot of people saying like, hey, we want more. We know we're only about 30 minutes in each one.
Yeah, they're pretty short.
Yeah. So
they're good size though.
Yeah. So we're going to give it a try. As long as our lives don't get crazy busy and all of a sudden like we have 14 jobs that we have to do, then we'll be weekly. But Paul will make sure it happens, I'm sure.
Also, Merry Christmas. If you're listening to this, Christmas has passed, and we're just counting down the days till next Christmas.
Yeah, now you're living in Christmas past. You're now in the time to end this. This is how we're going to end it. Yeah. You ready? You're now in the time where Alex said you're not allowed to listen to Christmas music.
That's true. You have to wait till New Year's.
Not listen to it right now.
Mm-hmm.
And also, there's been a lot of people that I've talked to that their mind was changed after listening to our podcast, that they agree with me. Your Mariah Carey Christmas music is garbage. That's all I have to say on the matter. I love you all.
Did you want me to say something? I'll say something.
No, we don't want to get another. We don't want to get another argument.
Mariah Carey has
made
we're not $60 million.
We're not doing it. We're not doing it. We're not going back into this.
$60 million.
We're not doing this. Thanks for listening. We love you guys. Continue to let us know. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, our website, YouTube. Buy a shirt. Buy a sticker. I don't have anything else.
Let us know if, this was a little bit more of a serious podcast as opposed to some of the other ones, which have been a little bit more goofy. So whichever one you like better, just let us know. What do you think about the serious ones? What do you think about the goofy ones? We want to hear from you.
Yeah, we're going to keep throwing these in and out. So
it should be some goofy, some serious.
Yeah.
Some
odd.
Goofurious.
Yeah. Goofurious. Anyways, guys, we appreciate you. Thanks for listening to the Oddcast. And as always, stay on.